If you ever ask yourself, how did we get here? Education is at the center of that answer. And meanwhile, our current administration is still hell-bent on dismantling the Department of Education. None of this is an accident. And today we are speaking with an expert as to why education is the one vital thing that we have left. I'm Maggie Gelson-Burnett.
And I'm Mallory Hagan. This is Pretty Furious.
Slay.
Slay indeed. Hello, Maggie.
Hello,
Happy
Mallory.
week to you. Last week, we weren't in a war, and this week we are. How's your week been?
Pew, pew, pew.
Well, literally,
yeah,
though,
wowzers.
maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah. Wowzers. What a day. What a week. What a year.
What a time to be alive.
It's been something.
Yeah, it has been something. This week has been a lot of news to take in. It's kind of a scary time, to be honest. The administration, waking us up last Saturday morning to, bombs dropping and then a surprise attack in Iran, and everything that has unfolded since then is just a lot to carry, especially for an administration and a president who campaigned on being the president of peace.
Not starting wars? Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. We certainly seem to be ready to do that because I think, as many people do, we are in need of some distractions from all the bullshit happening here at home. So we'll get into all of that, right?
Yes.
Before we do, we want to make sure folks are following us. So if you're not, we're at Pretty Furious Pod on all of our platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of the above. And we're over in Substack. We want to make sure you're following us there under the siren and at Pretty Furious Pod. So, yeah. You're following us, you've left a review, you are officially a part of the PF community.
And we're happy to have you.
We are happy to have you. What headline has made you pretty furious this week?
Well, my headline, it's more just a broad news story, which is that Kristi Noem has been fired this week.
Yeah, bye, girl.
And yeah, bye, Felicia. Loved having you. Just kidding. She spent a lot of taxpayer money on these god-awful ads that I recently just saw last night on floating about on the ether, basically promoting DHS and promoting the Department of Homeland Security. It was essentially her riding in a Western outfit on a horse overlooking I don't know, the fucking Grand Canyon or some shit. It was the most diabolical thing I've ever seen. And she's talking in this whole
very fantasy.
So listen, I just need this entire administration to get together for a week with Taylor Sheridan and go on a ranch somewhere and live out your fucking Western fantasies, because that is what all of these people want to do.
And
get your guns out. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Actually, why don't you just live it out on each other? Why don't you guys have your own mini Hunger Games?
Even better.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
Perfect. I love that.
You got Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem and Donald Trump and everyone being like, look whose gun is bigger.
Why did I just picture Stephen Miller, his bald head in a cowboy hat and him pulling out a gun from his side, to that Western song that's meow.
But let's be honest, Stephen Miller could never. He wouldn't even know what to do in that scenario.
No, absolutely not. But yeah, so Kristi Noem is out. We have a man by the name of, hey God, what's his name? Mark Wayne, all one word.
He is something else.
So listen, while the firing of Kristi Noem, she's allegedly getting moved to a different department, not fully fired.
What is the name of it? I wish I had
I think it's a department that doesn't exist.
No, and
right?
It sounds like something from an Avengers novel or something. It's I don't Shield Captain something. I don't know.
Perfect. Amazing. Yeah, sounds good, girl. Yeah, she's out, but we had 5 minutes of bliss where we got to celebrate her being ousted, only to be replaced by an MMA fighter ? Who was a plumber in a past life.
Mm-hmm.
And not dogging on
I do think he's the
way.
least educated member of the Senate as well.
He is. He actually only has an associate's degree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So doesn't even have a bachelor's.
But he's ready to fight, baby.
Yeah. The
videos of him being like,
And he's like
Okay.
an insurrectionist denier, and like, yeah, he's fucking nuts. So that is now who is in charge of security for the United States of America.
One problem to the
yeah,
next.
I mean, I think that what this administration has really taught me is that like any and all imposter syndrome that I have ever had in my life is completely null and void. Like it is not at all real. It doesn't exist. What do you mean you have imposter syndrome when you have like, I don't know, a relatively okay IQ and a bachelor's degree? Like that's insane. That's insane. There's just no need for it, girl. So go live your
Given
dreams.
everything that is surrounding us, yes. I think my favorite part of Kristi Noem's hearings was when Jasmine Crockett was sitting there and she was like, "But do you have a law degree? Do you have a law degree? Is that what the law says? Do you have a law degree?" And I was like, "No, Jasmine, she does not."
She does not. No,
And to be
she
fair,
sure
neither
doesn't.
do I. But I do think that perhaps I might have just like this many more brain cells than Kristi
Yeah,
Noem.
like I feel like if you put you and Kristi Noem in a room and like kind of, hashed it out in terms of intellect, you'd probably win, girl.
Yeah,
Like
I think I would be all right.
so
Oh
that's
man.
mine. What about you? What's your headline this week?
My headline is, while all of this has been going on, as I mentioned, I think it's a giant distraction from, the plummeting approval ratings, the fact that the Epstein files are out, there's more that needs to come. All of it is a distraction from just how horrendous everything is for this administration. But the DOJ did just drop the latest round of files in the last 24 hours, and they included there's been a lot of talk about there's one young woman in particular who had an interview, and apparently the FBI interviewed her multiple times, and those interviews had not been made public yet. And so those interviews, I think it was a total of 4 interviews, if I'm not mistaken, by the FBI for this one young woman in particular who had claimed that both Epstein and Donald Trump had assaulted her on multiple occasions, both sexually and physically. Those interviews have been made public in the last 24 hours. And what is most bothersome to me is I don't think many people realize, outside of seeing the Clintons be deposed, I guess, or questioned, that not a single person in the Epstein files, not one person, is under investigation. Not one person has been called into question, to include the President of the United States, who we have said should be in handcuffs. So the more that I ruminate on that, the first of all, more I feel sick, which is really hard to do given how entrenched I am in the news and politics every day.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
makes me feel physically ill, and it makes me fucking furious. So
What's so interesting about the Epstein files is that, people will say, a lot of people's rebuttal is, well, we don't have XYZ evidence that we need. Like, and basically what these people are saying is like they need essentially video evidence that this happened to these people.
And even then, they would probably say it was AI or something. I mean,
100%,
how much more
100%.
evidence do you need?
Absolutely.
We know that people don't believe women, but this whole scenario has just it makes it feel like all of our experiences are so invalid. Like 100%. To the public at large, they just don't care. Like they don't care what happens to women. They don't care what happens to girls. They just don't care. They don't care. And that's really hard. That's a really hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. What's more, I think, is like, we used to be a culture and a society that, at least when I was growing up, this was a thing where if you were even associated with somebody who was questionable, was, made a child feel uncomfortable, made an adult feel uncomfortable, anything like that, if you were even associated with them, and let's put being the president of the United States to the side briefly, like that was unacceptable to be associated with a pedophile. Not even to have done the things yourself, but just that association was the thing for people to be like, nope, I'm good. And that is no longer valid. Like even that, a lot of Republicans, their rebuttal is like, well, he not even Republicans, more MAGA specifically. Well, he's mentioned in the files. There's and to that I'm like, have you read them? Do you like have you read
More
any of
than
them?
anyone
Like
else?
what?
Doesn't
But
that
it's
seem
like
weird to you?
that used to have been, or would have been in the past, the thing that would have made people be like, oh God, he's mentioned a lot in those files next to a pedophile, like next to a guy who went to prison for, sex trafficking. Like that would have been alone the thing that did it for most people. But now that we live in this like morally depraved culture, and like we have no ethics, we have no value system anymore as a society, like it's completely okay to be associated with somebody like Jeffrey Epstein.
There is a person in my neighborhood who is a registered sex offender. And it's
Oh
very
my God, no way.
interesting. It's very interesting to me that and I looked up the details of the case so that I was aware of like
Mhm.
what happened. Um and it's very interesting to me because I know not everybody in my neighborhood voted the way I did, obviously. But they'll be the first ones to tell you that there's a registered sex offender. And there have been people who were like money down on a house that got out of it because they found that out.
Wow.
And yet our president
Hmm.
like, it's something that we talk about all the time. Unless it's in their backyard, it just doesn't, it's like in the ether. It doesn't exist. It's not their
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And that's actually a great segue into the person we're going to talk to today. I'm
Yeah.
really excited to bring her in because I think she's a person who understands that, it doesn't need to be in your backyard for it to be a problem for all of us.
Today, we are going to be interviewing Dr. Candice Duvieilh. She is a proud North Alabamian. She is a devoted toddler mom and the wife of a disabled veteran. She is a government accounting expert and former public school teacher. She has a BA in, get ready for it, public policy, a master's in public administration, and a doctorate in education. And now she is running to represent North Alabama in the 5th Congressional District. Wowzers, that's a lot of degrees. Let's welcome in Dr. Candice.
Let's do it. All right. Welcome, Dr. Candice Duvieilh. We are so glad to have you on Pretty Furious. What headline has made you pretty furious this week?
Well, that was a lot of pressure to pick one single headline, but I can tell you that I am pretty furious that my tax dollars are being used to kill children.
That part. Yeah.
Aren't we
Mhm.
all? Aren't we
Yeah.
all?
Yeah, that's the thing that's got me pretty furious. Today, I am also pretty furious that no one seems to care that another Black woman is no longer going to be sitting at the seat of power in Congress.
Mhm.
That's a little upsetting to me. So my
Yeah.
list is long, but those are the top two right now.
I'm on the side of TikTok right now of people who are opting to not pay their taxes this year as a result of, everything that's going on. And I think I'm finally like there. I think I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like no taxation without representation. I'm not paying my taxes this year. Like I don't want my dollars to be going to these wars that are happening, these insane, incompetent people in office who have no idea what they're doing. I just am like, I think I'm good coming up on tax season. I'm good. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Finding out that we were spending $220 million on propaganda ads of Ice Barbie's face, Kristi
That
Noem,
part.
among the $1 billion a day for Iran, it's just the idea that this administration and Republicans in general are the party of getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, as we continue to see over and over and over again, just gross incompetence when it comes to our tax dollars. I understand,
Oh,
Maggie.
no, when Space Boy took his chainsaw to you said, and everybody was just like, we have to take care of people at home. No new wars. We're not the world's police. All of a sudden now it's our responsibility to take out evil dictators. Now we're being good people. Now we're stepping up in foreign affairs and just trying to save the people of Venezuela and the people of Iran. But when we were actually putting money towards medical care and clean water and healthcare for women and all of these things, those are things that we don't want to help people with. It's all an excuse. It's infuriating. And no one seems to be holding the man that is the face of all of this because, again, he's a symptom. He is not the problem. But the man that seems to be the face of all of this No one's holding him accountable. Even his voter base is just like, oh, yeah, no, when we said no new wars, we meant like whatever new wars you want are totally fine, which is insane.
Well,
There's my rant about that.
It's cult behavior is what it is.
Yes,
That is a
yes,
cult.
it is.
Yeah,
It's
It's cult
disgusting.
behavior. Everyone's wrong except for this guy who has no credentials, no, no educational path, like all of the things that Trump is wholly unqualified in every sense, but he can do no wrong. But what's interesting is one of the first questions that we have for you is about your qualifications. Your degree path is so remarkable and impressive. And we just wanted to know what made you pursue your line of education and how does that shape how you view what's going on in the political landscape?
My high school US AP teacher used to scream, participation is the hallmark of democracy at us at least 2 times a day. And she had it written huge on the side of the classroom. And it is at this point just like engraved in my brain and on my heart. So I fell in love with like government from that perspective because she presented it so well when I was 16. So I always knew I wanted to go into politics and not particularly to be a politician, but to take care of people, to be in a position where I could influence government and help people. So that led me to Presidential Classroom when I was in high school, which is a program that no longer exists, and the world is much worse off without it. And then I graduated from high school and I went to Ole Miss, where I got my bachelor's in public policy leadership, not political science, because again, I cared about the policy. I cared about how we were going to impact the daily lives of people. And after graduating, the job market was crap in 2012. We all know that. So I worked a part-time job at Ulta while I worked on my master's in public administration and nonprofit management. Again, because my goal is to stand up organizations to work in a way that I can help people. And after finishing my master's, I started teaching. I taught 7th grade English and special education in a Title I school district, during which time I was tapped by the principal to start working on my doctorate in education administration, which I got from the University of Southern Mississippi. So my career, my education path, my credentials has been a whole lot of me just following the path where it takes me next to a place where I can impact the most people and do the most good.
Yeah, I I love hearing it's really refreshing to hear people say that what interested you in government and in politics was the aspect of taking care of people. You said that just a few moments ago. And that's something I think a lot of people forget in our culture, our society today, is that actually the government is meant to take care of the citizens that it governs. So that is the function and purpose of a government. So I think
Well, the
it's so
goal,
refreshing to hear that.
yeah. So the goal of government is supposed to be a net positive for the general public. That's why
Mm,
a businessman is not supposed to run a government, because
right.
government does not show positive outcomes through profit. They show positive outcomes through net positives for the people who live in the community or the country that you're serving. It's two completely different things. It's two completely different schools of thought, and it's two completely different degree paths for a reason.
Hmm.
Mm, that's going to be such a good clip that we will pull for for everyone to hear. I'm so excited about that.
I do love hearing that. And one thing that this administration and Republicans, conservatives as a whole, particularly the Heritage Foundation, they have been on a path to dismantle public education for a really long time, but it is coming to fruition quite rapidly under this administration. As a person who has many degrees and also has taught in public education, talk to us a little bit about how you see the dismantling of public education happening, and particularly this conversation right now around school choice. What are your thoughts on that?
So I firmly believe and operate from a place that education is the foundation from which everything else happens. Education is the foundation on which our children will grow up and be productive members of their community, productive people who can advocate for themselves. That is why a free and fair education was built
Mm,
into our government's fabric. It was built into our founding because they understood that that foundational knowledge is what would make our greater community what it needs to be for us to thrive.
Mhm.
So for me, I hate school choice. Specifically to answer that question, I hate school choice because the idea behind school choice comes from people who are like, well, why should I have to pay for a service that I'm not using? That is not a community mindset. That is not
Mhm.
I am part of building a greater community. No one thinks that way. Because if we did, then we would have to say, like, okay, a single woman who buys her first home and doesn't have a child in the public school education system, she doesn't have to pay property taxes, right?
Mhm.
Because she doesn't have to go to school. She doesn't need to use the public school program. It creates a lot of gray areas that ultimately does an extreme disservice to our children. And when we're talking about a system that is already tied to property values in a given area, a kid's education is only as good as the money can buy, right?
Mhm.
Taking more money out of that system is not okay. And even up here in North Alabama, people say all the time, like, oh, Madison schools are amazing. Even the superintendent of Madison County Schools is like, we don't know how we're going to fund our schools in the coming year because of the money that's getting pulled out of it. I need people to realize that when we take money out of schools, we are taking access to information away from children who will grow up and not be able to advocate for themselves because of that.
Well, let's pull that thread a little bit
Mm,
because I agree with you, but I want to pull the thread for people who don't understand why that's so bad, right? So I think in Alabama it's about $7,000 per head, right? So
Mhm.
if you're a person who lives in Madison City, which is where we live, Madison City schools are wonderful. But your child goes to a private school, and now you get to take your $7,000 of taxpayer dollars, and instead of it being invested in public school, you get to take that $7,000 and invest it in the private school that your kid is already going to. So it can go towards your private school tuition. Pull that thread a little bit for folks. What is the issue with that? And how does it lead to further dismantling public education and opportunity for students in public education?
So, our schools have a duty to serve all of the children that need the services they're providing, regardless of how much money they're receiving. One of the issues that public schools have always faced is like, and I'm going to use children who are being homeschooled, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
homebound students or whatever. If those students enroll after a certain point in the school year, the school still has to come up with money to fund that, even though they didn't get the full funding for the year based on enrollment. When we are pulling money out of schools for children who are already not using that, we are taking money away from children who are in the school already and need that money. It has been proven throughout Mississippi and Alabama that school choice money is going to students who are already enrolled in private school. It is
Mm-hmm.
not taking the student and the money that funds that student's education out of the public school and putting it into private school. It's leaving the student whose education is being funded in the public school system. It's just taking the money out that
Mm-hmm.
funds that kid's education. And so then we end up going down a path where, like, yeah, textbooks are outdated because textbooks are expensive. We have classroom ratios are off. We now have more students than staff that we can afford. We don't have school buildings to house these children. All of this is tied into education, but it's also tied into the overall infrastructure of a city as well. So there's a lot of pieces to that. Another interesting piece about funding schools that I feel like a lot of people don't understand is that the only part of a school system that can turn a profit per se is the school lunch program. So a lot of times what will happen when schools are underfunded is they will increase the cost of lunch for students and
Mm-hmm.
lower the value of the food that they're putting out the same way a restaurant would to increase profits. It's not ideal, but sometimes it's the only option that school districts have. And school choice is just making that harder.
that's so interesting to me. I truly feel like I could listen to you talk about this all day. I grew up going to a private Catholic school, K through 8, and am from a rural small town in eastern Iowa, and then went to a public school for high school. And Just wowzers, what a difference in the quality of education, I would say. And I'm speaking that public school was better, and so
Hmm.
I'm actually like kind of anti private school.
Well,
But
private schools aren't beholden to the same level of standards as
exactly,
public
yeah,
schools, and that's
exactly.
another
Private
issue when it comes.
schools are not beholden to standards. They're also not beholden to the same compulsion to report, like
Mm,
abuse or scenarios with children, which is
Hmm.
an
yeah.
interesting thing. Whenever a school is tied to a religious organization, it now follows under that like privacy between a preacher and a person who attends the church, right?
Mm.
So that's another
Wild.
thing. It actually harms our children. It puts our children in danger, and it removes a safeguard, which we're already watching happen on a larger scale, right? The all of our people that are in positions where they're supposed to report suspected abuse of children are now they're having that power kind of stripped from them, or their
Hmm.
credibility taken from them, which is a whole nother problem. But as a teacher who has worked in a Title I school, and I saw a creator post about this on TikTok the other day, I have students now, 12 years removed from the classroom. I have students that are married, they have children, and I still check in on them to make sure that they are okay, because I know what their home life was like when they were in my classroom. And
Mm.
I know how
Mm.
important the safe space I created for those children was. Our focus when we are talking about public education does not need to be on children who have parents that have the resources to drive them to a school every morning, to get them to a private school, to take care of them. We need to be focused on those children who don't have a safe space to have real conversations about even sexual education. Alabama, I'm looking at you. Not
Mm-hmm.
every child
Yeah.
has access to these things that you're demanding be put on parents instead of the public school system.
Something I think, I'm just going back to this for a moment. Something I think is really fascinating about the entire concept or conversation around education is the rural communities piece. So again, I grew up in a rural community, so I find it so interesting to learn how the differences between school systems, versus like metropolitan areas. So I'm curious how you feel like the neglect of rural communities, not just within education, but within maybe like every capacity, from healthcare to infrastructure to education, lack of young people going to these areas. Like, how does this impact Alabama on kind of a macro level, but also how is that kind of tied in with our education?
So our So there's two pieces of this, because in Alabama, when you're talking about a rural community, you're talking about I kind of two different things. One, there are the rural farming communities where it's just farmland after farmland, right? And those are kind of removed. They don't have access to broadband, things like that. But we also have the rural parts of our community that resulted from segregation, from marginalized
Mm,
groups being forced to a different part of the county or a different part of the city. And when you look at systemically over time, and I know people hate the word systemic, but it's systemic. When you look at that over time, what has happened? A lot of those rural communities, the latter portion, there's a lot of public housing, apartment complexes, and things like that that have been built in those areas that are owned by corporations. In our farms, that rural side of it, a lot of our farms are being bought up by corporations. And the number one thing that corporations lobby against is property taxes, because property taxes fund our schools. So a lot of times these corporations, in order for them to magnanimously set up shop in our county, I hate that we cater to that. It annoys the crap out of me. But um, one of the agreements that our county, city, state officials will make with them is that they don't have to pay those property taxes that fund our schools.
Mm-hmm.
That
oh, that's
money
fascinating.
that
Wow.
money that is then not being paid by the property owners in that area is being made up for with federal funds. And that's what Title I is. That's what Title IV is. That's what ADA, and that's what all of these things started funding for our schools, to make sure that those schools who weren't getting the property taxes were still getting funding to educate children. And when you dismantle the Department of Education, the administrative building, the administrative entity that disperses those funds to schools, those schools they just don't get money. It's not
Yeah.
like those corporations will magically start paying taxes. The state of Alabama is not magically going to start having billions of dollars to fund these schools. The money just stops existing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Fascinating.
one of the things that really just was so fascinating to learn about when I ran for Congress was that just how our schools are truly funded and why there is such a discrepancy, where those rural communities get their funding from, why you can have one thriving community, a la Madison, and 30 minutes down the road you have kids who don't have access to anything. Our kids have a Chromebook, every single one of them, that they bring home. It's theirs for the year. They have access to all of the latest technology. They have, STEM classes and all this kind of stuff. And you've got kids 30 minutes away in the same public school system, the same state, with an entirely different education. And I do think, school choice just makes that all the worse, right? That discrepancy in funding is only going to get worse. And it's really disheartening when you talk about the fact that people are not community minded, because so many people, in fact, are not, which is, I think, part of the reason you said this, that Donald Trump is a system. One of the problems, like the foundational problems of this nation, is individualism. This idea that like all of us can get it on our own, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like that you have to survive on your own, right? Or unless it's happening in your house or in your backyard, it's not your problem. And I think, centuries of other civilizations have taught us otherwise, that we need each other. We need to depend on our neighbors, and we need people who are running for office and who are in office who understand that and who are aware that a rising tide lifts all boats. One thing that I find really interesting about your story, well, not interesting, I mean, it's notable, is that you have a daughter, and she is a large reason why you decided to throw your hat in the race to run for office, to no longer be simply standing up organizations, but to put yourself out front and say, enough is enough. What scares you the most about Project 2025, 2026, and the way that this administration is attacking women?
Whew. So
How long do you have?
Yeah,
As
do you
we like
have
to
an
say,
yeah, I
4
mean, the
hours
flood,
later.
the flood of things that just came to my brain. So I recognized as a mom that I needed to teach my daughter that she was strong and that she could do anything, and to instill in her, because, and I acknowledge this, my daughter has a lot of privilege in her life. She has an overeducated mom. She has a engineer, blue collar machinist for a dad. My daughter will grow up thinking she's amazing and also know how to change her own oil. But my issue is that other children don't have access to those things. And that is what bothers me more than anything else. I can set my daughter up to be a productive part of the world, but I need the world to be nice to her too. And the world is not set up in such a way that other children are getting that benefit. And I don't like it.
Mhm.
So I am running for office because I don't want my daughter to be the isolated event. I want her to be the norm. And that
Yeah.
is where community comes into play. The thing that scares me most about Project 2025, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, is my daughter losing control of her own fertility before she finishes high school. That's what scares me about what Project 2025 is doing.
You kind of alluded to it before, and I know this is Alabama specific policy. If you're in Congress, you'll be in charge of federal policy. I do understand the differences here, but I think it's really important to talk a little bit about the way Alabama is attacking sex education and eliminating access to information for young people. And the reason I think it's important to talk about is because we have seen in the past places like Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, we are the testing ground for policy that ends up either moving across the states very rapidly or becomes proposed federal policy if they see that it works in a state like Alabama. So talk a little bit about how they're attacking that access to information here, and what are your thoughts on it?
So, the most recent attack, and I've made some content about this and I've had some conversations about this, is that we want, I say we, the Alabama State Legislature is trying to make it so that the only form of sex education that is taught in our public school system is abstinence. That is it. And
Wow.
When
Mhm.
we talk about children having the access to the information they need to be able to advocate for themselves, that is not a whole person education. It is not going to prepare children, my daughter, little boys, any of this to understand what is happening when their bodies start changing. And the large argument that we're hearing for this is that, well, those are things that should be discussed in the home. And that is the most Hank Hill approach to sex education I have ever heard. Because you have children, again, like mine, who I will be sure to explain to her what is happening with her body, what hormones are, how her ovaries work, all of these things. But there are other children who will not have that opportunity. There are other children who, when their mom tries to sit down and talk to them about this, their dad's going to be like, ew, we don't need to have those conversations in this house. That's
Mhm.
personal stuff. And that then turns it into a taboo topic that children aren't allowed to talk about. And if we want our young girls to grow up and be able to advocate for themselves, they need a more holistic approach to their sex education. And frankly, anecdotally, as someone who has met grown men in the wild, grown men who have mortgages and stuff, who do not understand how our periods work,
Mhm.
they could benefit from a more holistic education for them as well.
Well, absolutely. They need it
Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the idea that, you know, the pull-out method works, or you can't get pregnant if you're on your period, or I mean, there's like
Mhm.
all of these
Oh,
ideas that
I
you
wrote a Substack post about this where I pointed out, like, when I was in high school, everyone at my high school firmly believed it was a fact. If you did it in a pool, you could not get pregnant.
Here's the thing.
That's
Here's the thing that I also
crazy
think is
work.
missing. Here's the thing that I think is the thing that is also missing from this conversation. And we keep talking about Alabama. Obviously, that's because where you're running, and that's where I'm from. And Maggie has ties to Alabama. But this is a problem nationwide because, again, these tend to be testing grounds for how these things and this type of legislation spreads. When you look at teen pregnancy, more often than not, and I saw this study, and I hate that I didn't know we were going down this path, or else I would have made sure I had the correct information. But it was something like when teenage girls become pregnant, a majority of the time, the person who has impregnated them is 6 years older or more. More often than not, there are grown men who are impregnating teenage girls. And the reason that's happening is, first of all, because they don't understand their bodies. They have no concept of sex education, right? And that's only going to get worse. But also because of the culture that we are in right now and the spread of things like Christian nationalism. In Alabama, you can still get married underage.
Mhm.
You are still able to get married underage here. And so there's all these different elements of this conversation that sort of converge at the desire to remove information and access to it from young people. And then when you combine that with taking away our reproductive care rights, it's
Yeah.
extremely alarming.
Well,
Well,
and
then,
one of the tenets of Project 2025 is to lower the age of consent for marriage
Mhm.
yeah.
for young
And
girls.
then it's like if she doesn't have access to this information, if she doesn't know how her body works, if she can go ahead and just get married right out of high school or even younger, then she will fulfill the prophecy that they have for her, which is that she is only here to breed babies. She's only here to have
Over my
children.
dead body.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
which is as somebody who is actively pregnant, I'm just gonna say that's fucked up. So
Oh,
on
you're
record.
actively pregnant? Look,
Yeah, girl, crazy times. Thankfully I live in Illinois, but
I am thankful that while postpartum in Alabama, at least this man wasn't president.
Mhm.
Because
yeah,
Yeah.
Mallory and I have both been pregnant under a Trump presidency. So
Yeah. Fun
rough
times.
times.
Fun
oh,
times.
man.
So
And that's
so
another part of this that's just like someone texted me the other day and said that at an event or whatever, this man basically accosted her about abortion and was like, "You don't understand my perspective." And I was like, "Your perspective doesn't matter." Like,
irrelevant.
It's
All right,
look,
irrelevant.
if
Yeah.
Maggie,
you are
get your
in a
buzzer.
position where that is the life-saving care that you need and you want to turn it down, I fully support your ability to do so.
What's really interesting is I was just recently listening to a Call Her Daddy episode with Elizabeth Banks, who is a producer and actress and known for The Hunger Games and Pitch Perfect and all those things. She doesn't do a whole lot of like sit down interviews. And we happen to have a mutual friend. So I'm always interested in seeing and hearing from her. And it was very interesting the path that they went down talking about why she's so politically active. She's often at the DNC, like she's really involved in Democratic politics. And she said something that a lot of people are just not willing to say, but I think we would all agree. Like, people have sex for fun. Stop acting like teenagers are going to listen to you when you're like, you shouldn't have sex because God says so. Like, I'm sorry. First of all, not all of us believe in God, and that's okay. Second of all, people have sex for fun, and specifically teenagers have sex for fun. And you might not like that fact, but it is a real one, and it does exist. And to operate under any other idea is just having your head in the sand of reality. Like, I don't.
There's a big part of this that relies on trying to create this image of the perfect nuclear family and what your, and by your, I mean their idea of what that is supposed to look like, and just kind of trying to force us all to play our role. But for the most part, those are people who are playing a part. Those aren't actual human beings with emotions and feelings and thoughts and desires. It's just not. It's that's the part that gets me. I don't understand the need to control everyone around you. You can run your house however you want.
The party
Why
of
are you
limited
so
government is
dedicated
not
to trying to run mine?
Yeah. I mean, the other, like, kind of glaringly obvious piece, I think, of it too, is that, like, if we admitted to ourselves that some people just have sex for fun, some people just like doing it, then we would also have to admit that women are allowed to experience something pleasurable and only do it for the pleasure, and not have to do it for giving birth or producing a family or doing it for her spouse or whatever it is. Like, we would then have to admit to ourselves that women are worthy enough of experiencing something that is just flat out pleasurable, and that being the only reason. So that, unfortunately, is one of the cornerstones that Project 2025, I think, aims to dismantle, is the idea that women can experience anything that is remotely nice.
Or just that we're human in general.
Human. Yeah.
And that we're here for something other than to produce children,
breeding,
and to produce pleasure for someone else. And I've made content about this. These men, and this is, I hear so many people try to appeal to humanity that does not exist. These men view women the same way they view a piece of land in Texas that has oil underneath it. They want to control the land so that they can control the resource underneath it. They want to control us so that they control our ability to produce more laborers for this capitalist environment that's been created. There is no humanity in that. It's a profit center. They look at us like a business, and we need to accept that and start acting accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, acting accordingly is part of jumping into running for office, right? Putting yourself out there, getting involved in these systems that have meant to oppress us. And I think it's really admirable. I know how hard it is. What has been the most surprising part of it, maybe good and bad, that you've experienced so far?
So the first part of what you said, I want to address the jumping into office and running. It's very glaringly obvious that when someone says that they're willing to compromise or they're going to meet in the middle, what they're talking about compromising on is my right to bodily autonomy. And if you're not going to make decisions that are going to be best for me and my family, then I will get up there and I will do it my dang self. And so, yes, I am running for office. The most surprising thing for me has been the people that align with my views that I didn't know would. So when you first run for office, you basically run through your contact list, call everyone you've ever met, and just, in today's day and age, for me, it was like, hey, my Facebook content is about to change, and I just feel like you should know why. And so there were a lot of people who I thought were just going to, accuse me of TDS, start screaming at me, that were just like, heck yeah, we need someone like you in office. That's been the most surprising thing for me. And it's funny because most people expect you to say the opposite. Like, I'm surprised by how many of my family were willing to cut me off. That, for the most part, didn't surprise me. What surprised
Hmm.
me were the people who fell in line with what I was trying to do. And I'm finding we have the same views. They just never talked about it.
Hmm.
Mm,
That's always
yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. Um, I
But then you
mean,
start screaming, I need you to start talking about this more. Like, one of the biggest jokes that I make, my husband, if you guys did any stalking of me at all, big beard, big red truck, don't tread on me tags. He's a veteran. Everyone is like, I can't believe your husband's letting you run for office as a Democrat. What? What? No. So
Letting
my
me.
husband, yeah, first of all,
yeah,
letting
first of
me.
all.
Okay. Yeah. No, exactly. But the the piece of that for me, I told my husband, he was like, what is my job in all of this? It was like, my job, your job is to show up looking like that and tell
Hmm.
people that you stand by what is coming out of my mouth. That's what we need. And we
Yeah.
need more people to stand up and own that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mallory
Well, we
and I
talk about
talk
that.
about
People who
that
look
a
like
lot.
us.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's really
Of like,
important.
yeah, informing people that you can be a white woman in America and, and be also incredibly progressive and a feminist and, all of the things that the right doesn't want you to believe. Yeah, we often refer to it as like MAGA passing or Republican passing. And
I know my
yeah.
household really throws people. Not only was I Miss America, MAGA thoughts, but also we're a military family, also MAGA thoughts.
Yeah.
We were just like throwing people for a loop at every turn.
They're like, what's going on here? Yeah.
Not nonchalantly dropping Miss America.
Yeah, it's fully.
we're I just think people think it's probably MAGA, and that's because it is. Anyway, okay.
You would be correct.
So in this district, in Congressional District 5, Dems received 29% of the vote in 2022. Now, I could make a strong argument that the person who was running on the Dem ticket actually didn't really run a campaign, so we don't know if that's an accurate representation of how people will vote in this midterm. But nonetheless, it's a pretty huge gap to overcome when I think Dale Strong won 67% of the vote. So what makes you think in this moment that we can do it now?
We are sitting in an R15 district. That means that he got 15% or 65% essentially. And what makes me think that I can win? Because there's R17 and R22 districts that are flipping all across this country. And that's been an interesting thing too. From the beginning, everyone has told me, you're going to have to come after Dale Strong. You're going to have to call him out. And I do call him out when he says stupid things. But I am
So daily? Okay.
yeah. So, but for me, I wanted to give people something to vote for. And I feel like there is a campaign strategy that is giving people something to vote against. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to give people something to vote for. I'm here to make this information feel accessible. And I am here to make you feel like part of the process, not like you're being left out of it. And also remind you of why Dale Strong's not great at his job. So I think the combination of that with the data across what we're seeing in the nation means that if we put the right Democratic candidate up in this district, we can flip this district. Another big piece of this, a lot of people like to play, and Mallory, you experienced this as well. Well, you're not from here. Me and the vast majority of the other people that have moved here are not from here. And to completely eliminate or invalidate the opinion of those people who are coming here, who are bringing their families, who are bringing their tax dollars, who are bringing their expertise to our area, is doing a great disservice to the community overall. So that's a long tangent reason to say the statistics say that we will flip this district. I believe that I'm the right candidate to do it. District 5 has a lot of very unique needs that do require an expert advocating at the congressional level. Not every district across the United States does, but this one does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe before we go and ask where people can find you, just give a little bit of context about this district. Why is it that people are coming here? What is it that people are coming here to do?
So most people default to thinking that what this district has to offer is the Redstone Arsenal, and that's it. And that is a piece of it. There is a lot of defense contractor spending. There's a lot of direct Department of Defense funding in this district. But our farmers are largely funded through USDA grants. We have a Smithsonian installation. A lot of people don't realize that the Space and Rocket Center is the Smithsonian Museum. So we have funding coming from a whole lot of different areas. Corporations don't come here because they just really want to be close to the arsenal. Corporations come here because they can transport goods by rail, car, or water in this district. That's
Hmm.
why this area is so attractive to them, and why we're seeing pharmaceutical companies come here and Amazon come here and aerospace and all of that. It is not just the arsenal. That's a piece of it, but it's not all of it. And when you are constantly negotiating this level of contracts where you're choosing to give people tax breaks to get corporations to come here because they're going to bring X amount of jobs, you need someone that's going to ask the fine print. Specifically, one of the big things we're being told to celebrate is that Eli Lilly is coming here and they're going to bring like 500 jobs. Well, like 300 of those are temporary construction jobs, which means it's going to be people coming here to work during the week, stay in our hotels, and then take their money back home on the weekends, right?
Yeah.
That leaves 200 of those. How many of those are going to be transplants that Eli Lilly is bringing here to stand up their new labs? And how many of them will actually be Alabamians? And when you look at it from that perspective, it's not as many jobs as you think it is.
Hmm.
So we need a representative that's going to ask those questions and give answers to them, rather than just being like, I don't know, they gave me a big donation to my campaign and they seem like real fine fellas.
Yeah.
That's not productive. That's not helping anybody.
Yeah, it's so true that I have always been of the camp, especially given my educational background, which is very different than yours, and my background in general, that I was running because I was like, if you're a representative of the people, the most important thing that you are able to do is listen and surround yourself with experts. Be a person who's accessible to your district and do what they want you to do in Washington. That's what you're supposed to do. And it's so interesting to think about a district like this that really does need a policy expert, really does need somebody who has your educational pedigree and understands all of the moving parts of why this district is unique and how to get people on board with whatever it is that we need you to do. So I'm super excited that you're running and appreciate you putting yourself in this position. It's difficult, but it's really worthy. Where can people find you?
So my website, CandiceDuvieillForCongress.com. I am Candice for Congress everywhere except for Facebook, where it is Candice Duvieilh for Congress, because Candice for Congress was taken. And you can sign up to have a 15-minute chat with me on my website. You can get some merch there. I really like some of the t-shirts my team has put out. And of course, just follow along and donate if you feel led to invest in the campaign. Sign up to volunteer and sign up for our weekly newsletter and come out and see me at some of these events we're having over the next couple of months.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Candice, for being here. I so appreciate it and loved this conversation. I think our audience is going to learn a lot.
Well, thank you. That's what I'm here for. And thank you guys for having me.